Okay, so let's start again, this time on social statistics. So, is there anybody from BPS Riau? Pak Muji? BPS? Yeah. Perfect. So this will not be new to you, but hopefully people get a deeper appreciation of your work. We're going to be talking about census, statistics, and satellite surveys. So many of the questions that we have for ocean accounting are social. And so what we need to do is use existing data, but extend that data towards the ocean. So next, what are social statistics? They measure how people live, and that becomes the basis for public policy, allocating resources, development planning, right? And again, what you do not count, it does not become prioritized. So many of the things that we're not counting at the moment, maybe that's why they're not being prioritized. So, who produces them? BPS, census surveys, sample surveys, administrative records. So in the next slide, there's two key surveys that almost every country has around the world. The Census Survey and the Household Income Expenditure Survey, known as HICE. Yep. So the census is your demographics, your complete enumeration. You try and find everyone per dwelling, and it's around every 5 to 10 years. And this is your baseline for public policy. Then, every 3 to 5 years, you have the HICE survey. And this is sample-based, so not every household. But this is critical for understanding development, poverty, and again, for informing public policy. So these are the two main instruments that we are going to be discussing and building on. Census, HICE. Next. So the census, what we're looking at is population, demographics, the composition of the household, who leads the household, the housing, for example, what type of housing, do they have sanitation, the level of education, and also migration, both within, out, and into Indonesia, and also the provinces as well. So census is mostly about demographics, and in the next slide, we have the HICE. So we ask people, how much do they earn, the income? How much do they spend, the expenditure? And then employment, how much food they consume? What are their living conditions? Access to school, hospital, basic services. The key one that I want to point for the ocean as well is expenditure and food. For example, how much do these households eat fish or seafood product? How much money are they spending to get this fish or seafood? Or do they go and catch the fish themselves? So this is the HICE survey. Next, please. So, those two surveys are very important, but of course we're looking at the ocean, and it's missing quite a few components. So for example, if we wanted to look at the amount of households tied to the marine sector, we can. It's possible. We look at how many people are involved in aquaculture or mariculture, how many are involved in fisheries, for example. But then there's other sectors as well. Seafood processing is another one. But then when it comes to tourism, we don't know. We don't know if they're inland, if they're on the coast. So that requires a lot more work. How do they use or how do they benefit from ecosystems? We need to ask more questions on is their house near a mangrove, or do we have to do more analysis on that? Do they catch the fish and consume it themselves? So in the HICE, it only gets counted if it's sold at the market. If they eat directly many times, or they gift to someone else, it's not counted. And then finally, this one here, the time allocated. Many of the activities, especially around the world for women, they're unpaid and they're uncounted. So, for example, if the fisher goes out onto the boat and the woman stays behind to look after the family, that's not paid, but that still allows for an ocean activity. So you can start to connect the two. And so we attempt to do this with social accounting. So just as a recap, the livelihoods connected to the ocean, how they're benefiting from the ocean, and also the paid and unpaid transactions related to the ocean. Next. So maybe you're very interested in doing something like this, where you want to understand ocean dependency, for example. So the first step is you make a survey, and I would heavily recommend using secondary data, using the census, using the HICE, so your questions need to be linked to the census and the HICE. Then you pilot in a small area. So maybe you test with 10, 20 people, see if the survey is working, how long it takes to do the survey. When we were doing this in the Maldives, when we tested with students, it was 15 minutes. And then we went to the port, and there were some retired people. And then the survey was 50 minutes. So you have to test and see how much time will it actually take, and how many people do we need. And then, of course, you can deploy. So you take the survey, you get your enumerator or surveyors, and then you go into the villages or the city. So next. What I'm about to show you is an example from, it's called, it sounds like math formula, but it's spelled fuvamula, but it's formula. And it's a bit small, but we'll zoom in. One last discussion. From your policy challenge, what do you need to make, or what social data do you need to better understand your challenge and to address your challenge? So what we're going to do is, once you have an understanding of what social data you need, what are 3 to 5 questions that you need to ask, and who do you need to ask? And then we'll report back to everyone. So for example, just quickly with coastal erosion, maybe you want to ask the people next to the mangroves versus those not next to mangroves and see if there's a difference. So where would you also get your social data? We can ask our colleague from BPS, of course, but maybe there's other places as well where there's surveys that have been done from the university, from NGOs, and so on. So again, link to your challenge, produce 3 to 5 questions, and then we'll report back. So, only to say, terima kasih banyak. And I hope this was useful for you. And you can connect whatever you're working with to the other surveys as well. So again, thank you, and I'll be around for the next 2 days.